Let's just jump right in, because today's explainer covers a historical mystery that seriously reads like a modern forensic cold case. We're traveling back in time to examine one of the most chilling discoveries ever made in the Americas, literally frozen in time for 5 centuries. Right off the bat, we're faced with an absolutely impossible scenario. I mean, what killed a perfectly preserved 14-year-old girl in the death zone of an active volcano? It just defies everything we know about human survival. Back in 1999, an archaeological team uncovered this teenager who looked like she was just taking a nap. But as we're going to see, a peaceful sleep in her exact resting place is basically impossible. Section 1. The highest tomb on Earth. To really grasp her end, we have to look at the crime scene. Mount Llullaillaco in the Andes, 22,000 feet. That staggering number is the altitude where the maiden was found. Up there, you're in what mountaineers actually call the death zone. It's an extreme environment with 50% less oxygen than at sea level. Modern climbers, seasoned experts with advanced oxygen tanks and thermal gear, barely survive up here, let alone manage to dig a tomb. When lead anthropologist Dr. Johann Reinhard and his team unwrapped her, they didn't find a skeleton. He was absolutely stunned, saying those hands were perfect, if not the best preserved mummy in the world. We don't know of any other better. They found a girl with intact skin and vibrant, colorful clothes. Essentially, the freezing cold and incredibly low oxygen teamed up to create a totally accidental cryogenic chamber. But she definitely didn't just wander up there for a hike. Section 2. A 500-year-old autopsy. So, forensic pathologists had to rule out the obvious by putting her through a modern CT scan. Naturally, you'd expect obvious signs of a mountain fatality, right? Broken bones from a bad fall, severe starvation, or massive frostbite. Instead, the scans revealed perfect foot bones with zero trauma and absolutely no signs of frostbite. So, if the freezing mountain didn't kill her, and she didn't fall off a cliff, what did? The scan also dropped this shocking little detail. Her stomach and bowels were totally full. She had eaten a hefty final meal within just 2 hours of her death. And here's the crucial point. You do not eat a big, hearty meal in the freezing, oxygen-deprived death zone and then just randomly drop dead of natural causes a couple of hours later. It points directly to a sudden, very unnatural end. Section 3. The chemical time ring. To figure out exactly what happened before she hit that summit, scientists turned to toxicology. Now, hair basically acts like a tape recorder for your body's chemistry. And looking at the bioarchaeological data mapped out over her final year, it's deeply unsettling. 12 months before her death, boom, a massive spike in cobra consumption. That's the natural leaf cocaine is derived from. 3 months before, her diet drastically shifts to maize and freeze-dried llama meat, which are the staple foods at Inca way stations. And then just hours before death, that final meal alongside extreme alcohol intoxication. This wasn't some random accident. Her entire final year was meticulously orchestrated. And that perfectly explains the dietary shift 3 months prior. 1,000 miles. That is how far this 14-year-old girl walked. She traveled from the glittering Inca capital of Cusco, across harsh deserts, all the way to this remote, freezing volcano. Section 4. Virgins of the Sun. So why? Why on earth send a teenager on a 1,000-mile death march? Well, the answer lies deep in the Inca Empire's belief system. The maiden was likely one of the virgins of the sun. These were young girls chosen for their purity, taken from their families, and raised in strict seclusion to serve the gods. And a select few were chosen for the ultimate Capacocha ritual, a human offering. The main takeaway here is the motive. To the Inca, this wasn't a murder. She was a sacred offering, ascending the mountain to become immortalized and literally live with the gods. And honestly, look at the evidence of how highly revered she was. She was buried with sacred ceramics brought straight from the capital. She wore this magnificent feathered headdress, which to the Incas was way more valuable than gold. She was even buried with a male tunic, which strongly suggests her father, probably a local noble, actually accompanied her on this final tragic journey. She was treated like an absolute goddess, celebrated by the emperor himself before she made that final ascent. Section 5. The Final Breath. Now we reach the agonizing, terrifying final moments on that 22,000-foot summit. The dread really builds when you look at the psychological terror woven into her final hours. The priests were up there preparing her body for eternity. They wove her hair into incredibly tight braids right there in the biting, freezing wind and painted red ritual paint onto her cheeks. The psychological weight of knowing exactly what was about to happen, it must have been just immense. To manage that terror, we see extreme chemical sedation. When they found her, she still had a massive bulge of coca leaves stuffed in her cheek. Combine that with skyrocketing levels of chicha, which is an 8% alcohol corn bear they fed to victims, and she was heavily, heavily drugged and intoxicated. This was absolutely an intentional move by the priests. Maybe it was to keep her compliant and prevent a struggle, or maybe, in their minds, to ease her transition into the next world. But her body betrayed the intense stress she was under. Traces of vomit were found frozen right on her lips. It's a really chilling, visceral reminder of the physiological stress, the overwhelming fear, and the extreme intoxication she endured right at the very end. Crucially, though, the forensic reality shows us what we don't find. Other mountain sacrifices from the time often show signs of brutal violence, strangulation, blunt force trauma, or the horrific signs of being buried alive, like broken fingernails. But the Maiden? No neck trauma, no broken nails, and absolutely no signs of a struggle. By ruling out a violent physical fight, we realize the priests used a much more insidious method. Dr. Reinhardt's observation actually holds the final key to unlocking our 500-year-old cold case. When he first found the mummy, there was a thick woolen cloth pulled incredibly tight over her entire face and knotted at the back of her head. The murder weapon was literally hidden in plain sight. As he noted, once you have cloth wrapped around your head and your mouth at 22,000 feet, you're out of breath immediately. So, the shocking truth is finally revealed. The extreme altitude, the heavy chemical sedation from the alcohol and coca, combined with a tight cloth wrapped around her face, it gently suffocated her. She couldn't struggle. She just went to sleep forever, perfectly preserved for half a millennium. This 500-year-old cold case leaves us with a pretty haunting final question. Do we view her entirely through the lens of a tragic, terrified victim of a harsh execution? Or do we recognize that in her world she was an immortalized goddess, fulfilling a profound, albeit fatal destiny in the clouds? It's definitely something to deeply ponder the next time we try to judge the complex beliefs of the ancient world. Thanks for exploring this explainer with me today.